I want to welcome everyone to the Building Connections to Transform Public Safety and Prevent Incarceration series. This is really building a learning community and how to focus today on building support, gaining and overcoming skepticism as it relates to transforming public safety and preventing incarceration overall. We have two amazing groups with us today, and we'll have Sheba in just a moment introduce that. But pulling this together, you'll see a little star from a lot of names. That's the planning committee and our presenters today. Those groups are represented by the Detroit Justice Center, Michigan Collaborative to End Mass Incarceration, MySemi, Emergent Justice, Friends of Restorative Justice, and the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion. Just a quick agenda for today. Again, welcomes and introductions, please place them in the chat. We're going to go through our session goals. We have two fabulous partnerships. And we really heard a lot of the feedback in the first couple of sessions that we wanted to make this much larger scope statewide. And how do we really bring those strategies into action and get past that perhaps hesitancy to make this as impactful work as possible? And we have two great organizations spreading across the state, how to develop coalitions and build unity. And then we're going to go into our breakout sessions for about a half hour, led by some of the planning group, but also having one of our speakers in each group. So really looking forward to that. And we're going to wrap it up, talk about our next session, which will be in December, as a sort of coffee hour deep dive to talk with our presenters. Next slide, please. We do like to set our community agreements, and if you have any that you would like to add in our chat, please do so. But it's really about bringing your authentic self, respecting others. This is content that we don't want you to be necessarily distracted, be engaged, thoughtful, especially in the way that you react. Even, how do we give affirmations just amongst the group here in even a Zoom setting? We're going to flow. If we have to flex a little bit, we're open to doing that. So please come in with that tentativeness and an open-mindedness, and hopefully these are different opinions that are going to amplify the way your work is received and grows as well. So please be respectful of those different opinions, not necessarily combative or thinking about responses that are rebuttals, but listening and stepping back and maybe sacrificing a little bit of our own position to hear that of others. And if there's anyone else, please feel free to raise your hands as we go through our open communication. So again, these are always fluid, these are evolving, and these are what we've heard from all of you, and can begin to build this as a living document as well. The goals and opportunities today, 4 things: build, share resources, align strategy, tactics, and connect. I think already in this first few minutes, we're hitting on a lot of those. How can we make this community grow? It looks like our chat, we have dozens of folks in the room, so that's fabulous. And especially too, this isn't just a Southeast Michigan, this is a statewide effort. So already connecting the West Michigan, East Michigan, and any resources that you may come up with, things that are spoken reference to, feel free to share those in the chat as well. We'll begin to catalog those resources that may be tangential. We'll ask our speakers for some of their main resources that they go to as well. And how do we see that others are doing work across all disciplines, all parts of the state, and how can we really unify all those efforts? And finally, to make sure that this happens here in the state of Michigan, locally, in your jurisdiction, but across the whole state. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sheba with the Detroit Justice Center. She's going to take us through our speaker intros. Sheba.
Thank you, Brian. Peace, everyone. I am just going through the chat and just loving all of the energy in the chat, all of the introductions. Welcome again. I am Sheba Rogers, Divest Invest Senior Program Manager with the Detroit Justice Center. Very excited to be here to kick us off with our speakers and learn a little bit more about their organizations and who the individuals are who will be sharing with us today about their wonderful work. So I'll just jump right into it. We'll hear about 3 efforts, if you will. One is LINC Up. We'll hear from LINC Up. LINC Up believes that empowered communities equate to thriving communities, And to change neighborhood outcomes, we need to change how decisions are made about neighborhoods. We'll hear from Isaac DeGraaf, the policy strategist at LINC Nonprofit Housing Corporation. Isaac has contributed to LINC Up's advocacy and civic engagement work for the past 3.5 years. This includes organizing and advocating for policy changes and community resources and connecting residents to engagement opportunities and resources by building relationships with residents, organizations, and community stakeholders. LINC Up also is a part of the Community-Owned Safety Coalition, and so we'll hear a little bit about their work as well. A part of that coalition includes orgs such as, of course, LINC Up, Urban Core Collective, the NAACP of Grand Rapids, ACLU of Michigan, and Urban League of West Michigan. So we're excited to hear a little bit more about the coalition. This is a grassroots community collaboration to address local issues impacting Grand Rapids residents and activate community power to address the growing inequity in our neighborhoods. Together, we are engaging in grassroots projects to reinvest our resources into what we know keeps us safe, right? So physical and mental health, affordable housing, environmental sustainability, education, state accountability, and equitable economic development. So we'll hear a lot more about their work. I'll also introduce and allow them to kick us off Willie Patterson, Director of Engagement and Advocacy at LINC Up. Willie brings more than a decade of expertise and vision to the LINC Up team. Willie is a self-described as having a servant's heart, has worked with community members in areas of civic organization, education, leadership, and in workforce development. Willie works tirelessly on establishing a bridge of communication, sharing the opportunities found within the community and through community partners. So without further ado, please allow me to pass it over to Willie and Isaac to just share more about your work, and then we'll get into a little bit of Q&A.
All right, great. Am I able to share my screen? If not, we can just move forward.
Yes, I believe so.
All right.
Dr. Jen can assist with that.
Okay. It looks like I think she has to stop sharing hers, maybe. There we go. All right, I think we're good to go. Willie, I'll pass it on to you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Good, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Rogers, for such a great introduction. You almost made me feel important, like I'm just really out here doing everything in the world. But, you know, thank you for, brightening my day. And, just to really start out and talk a little bit about LINC is, we know that neighborhoods matter. And, like our name implies, LINC, we connect people around what you know, who you know, where you live, and what you make to address systemic issues causing racial inequities. So once we start to look at those 4 areas I named, who you know is exactly what we say. We want to make sure that our community is aware, can touch, can talk to, have access to our appointed and elected officials. We want to make sure that because our community has the right to information, we are giving information that helps our community make informed decisions, not decisions from the standpoint of what LINC believes, but we want to make sure that our community has those resources and the information to make informed decisions that when they go to that voting booth, or when they start to make those decisions, they are making the best possible choice when they do that. The what you know again is that access to information, making sure that we are exhausting every avenue to reach our residents. We know that all of our residents don't have the same level of technology or educational understanding, so we want to make sure that we are not using silver bullets to address the community, but more or less a silver buckshot where we are spreading it out on multiple platforms. So if we are doing a campaign and we're letting people know and we're informing the community, we want to touch every avenue from social media to actually door-to-door flyering in the community, mass text opportunities, videos, all of these things that make sure that our community, who at times, in marginalized communities, you may not have that time to be a part of every meeting going on, but that does not mean that you are not concerned and you are not a part of this community. So with that, what is collecting that information and reporting that information back out to the community. So that's a large piece of what we do in making sure that our community stays informed. On top of attending these opportunities and these resources, we want to make sure that the community is hearing what others in the community are saying by reporting back our findings and our results from our meetings. The Where You Live is our unapologetic approach to continue to keep an affordable housing base in our area. So right now we are the owners of about 240 rental units, as well as, lots of new construction. We just finished our second phase of condos that we're building that are for sale. But we want to make sure that we are getting people who could, potentially be paying $1,100 in rent, where you could buy this house for that same amount. So we want to make sure that we're addressing the realities of, hey, did you know you could do this? Did you know that you can own these properties and not just be a renter forever? And what you make is our workforce development. Our workforce development is really tying our residents to financial capability opportunities. So whether that be expungement, we have been doing expungement clinics for the last couple of years. We have about a 66% success rate with our expungement program. We've secured some funding to help people process those costs associated with the expungements. And then we make sure that once those records are expunged, we create on-ramps for that next level of employment, jobs and better jobs, and then introducing those opportunities to our community. And then, making sure that if we need those soft skills added in, if we need resume building, if we need interview skills, all of these things equate to economic opportunities. We just started our next phase in economic opportunities with the Friend of the Court system. So by holding events with Friend of the Court where no one can be incarcerated, no one will go to jail at these events, we were able to help about 60 people at our last event, which was a couple of weeks ago. Which was a highly successful event. We'll be doing more work with the Friend of the Court and making sure that we can remove those barriers, return our residents who really want to make sure they're on the right track. They want to, remove these warrants. We want to make sure they're in the right place and getting those right opportunities, those opportunities that make a difference, that can change their life, that can add more choices and a better quality of life once we address some of those barriers, remove those barriers, and start to offer on-ramps for opportunities in our community. So I know we only have a short time. I could go on forever about LINC, but I'm going to turn it over to Isaac, and he's going to talk about the coalition work.
Thanks, Willie. So that was a great overview of LINC. But as Shiva mentioned in our introduction, we're really excited to share our work as a coalition. And it goes beyond us, right? We wouldn't be here without our founding partners, who she mentioned, but also our dozens and dozens of organizers around the city that have gotten us to where we are. So we're really excited to share what we've done so far and where we're heading. So I want to set the scene a little bit here on how we got to where we are at. So back in 1995. So the Grand Rapids has a city charter, much like the U.S. has the Constitution that kind of lays out how our country operates, right? City of Grand Rapids has their city charter, Back in 1995, the police union really did a push to a charter amendment, right? They were worried about having enough funding for GRPD, or Grand Rapids Police Department, right? As the tax base was declining in the city, and they were worried about having enough funding and having enough staffing for their department. So they had a charter amendment passed that was by vote. It was on the ballot, where right now a minimum of 32% of our general fund has to be spent on policing. Again, we have a mandated minimum of what can be spent on policing in our city. And it's just ridiculous, right? So that was done in 1995, and we'll kind of explain how we're trying to kind of change that moving forward. So we really got involved in kind of this police advocacy work back in 2015 with our partners organizing around implementing body cams for GRPD. And so that was successful. And then in 2019, we were successful in getting the formation of an Office of Oversight and Public Accountability, right? Really hoping that, okay, here's a body that's outside the police that can actually, hold them accountable for things. And like many of you have maybe experienced in your towns, we realized that those wins that we thought we had weren't really making the difference that we thought they would, right? The Office of Public Oversight and Accountability, they didn't really have any power, right? The police weren't sharing with them the things they needed. It was kind of a farce. So we really pivoted beginning the summer of 2020 of looking at the funding structures, right? And so we had that charter minimum where a minimum of 32% of our general funding needed to be spent on policing, but we were actually spending way more than that. We were pushing about 39% in 2020. So we did a campaign with folks and where we actually got the votes at City Commission to reduce that funding down to that charter minimum. So to go from 39% down to 32%. So we had the commission votes. We were super excited. We had 4 hours of public comment at that City Commission meeting, right? This is during COVID, so it was all phone-in public comment. And then city administration, after that 4 hours, came in and refused to hold the vote based on a legal technicality. Right, so that was really a really big loss for us. We thought we at least had the votes, right? We thought we at least got it down to this 32%. We freed up about 9% of funding that could go to social services that we thought really, are what makes our community safe. And city administration didn't even let that happen when we thought our elected officials, when we had 4 votes. And so that's when we really pivoted to form this coalition for community-owned safety. And so in 2021, we launched our Public Safety Is campaign. And so Public Safety was looking at trying to change the narrative around safety and talking about what actually makes our communities safe, right? So public safety is the result of significant investment in community resources, services, and programs that lead to better housing, health outcomes, and economic opportunities. To achieve true public safety, the community must have a greater influence on the City of Grand Rapids budget priorities, right? So the main 3 goals of that campaign was to inform the Grand Rapids community of how the City of Grand Rapids sets its funding and budget priorities. So again, just a big education campaign, and then create an opportunity for the community to weigh in on spending and budget priorities and develop a widely shared definition of public safety that is rooted in community voice, right? Again, it's not the police that make us safe, it's investment in all these different things. So we launched that in 2021. And then in April of 22, Grand Rapids police officer murdered Patrick Loya here in our city, right? It made national news. And when that happened, we were like, we had lots of people coming to us, what can we do? And we decided, I think this is the time to go after changing that charter amendment I discussed that was passed back in 1995. So we started a petition in the summer of 2022 to try to get a charter amendment on the ballot that would remove that 32% mandated minimum and replace it with language that would say a certain percentage of the general fund would need to go to affordable housing, equitable economic development, mental health, physical health, and police accountability. So we furiously were trying to get signatures to get that on the ballot, so it would be on the November election. We found really quickly that here in Grand Rapids, right, which has some serious conservative roots, that people don't like the terms defund the police, right, and didn't want to talk about public safety. But if we talked about investment in affordable housing and mental health and physical health and those things, that was something people could get behind. So that was really what our messaging was around, to try to get those signatures. We had to get 7,000 signatures by August, and unfortunately, we came up just short. That was partly due to just not being organized enough, right? None of us had done this before, and we kind of rushed it. We were really wanting to do this, narrative campaign first before trying to do the ballot amendment. But then after all this attention, after the murder of Patrick Loya, we tried to jump on that, and it unfortunately was unsuccessful getting that petition done and getting on the ballot. So then we were left with, well, what do we do now, right? This is still an issue. People were engaged. People couldn't believe that we had that charter amendment once we started talking about it, right? It was something that folks didn't even know existed, and they were, pretty furious about it. And so we pivoted kind of at the end of December of 2022 and then through the spring of 2023 to do our Reinvest in GR campaign. So what we did with that is we took over 50, almost 60 organizers from around the city, around those different topic areas. So organizers are looking for affordable housing, organizers in mental and physical health, organizers in environmental sustainability and equitable economic development. And they each held a community meeting where they talked about the city's budget and how the city is spending money in each of those areas, right? So the housing group created this meeting, and they talked about how the city is investing in housing. And then we talked with residents of how would you rather investments go, right? We would talk about how you spend your money, just like in someone's household, how the city spends its money represents its priorities, right? And the amount of money that was spending on resources was so minuscule, and the community didn't like that, right? We had overwhelming in our survey results that people were upset. They were like, "Wow, I didn't realize we weren't investing in these things like we thought." So you're right. These are what make our community safer. So those meetings were super beneficial and got people talking about the city budget in ways that we never have before. The city came to us and was they were so surprised that community members actually cared about the budget. And it was like, well, if you present the budget as a 300-page document that no one can understand, yeah, you're not gonna get a whole lot of engagement. If you meet community where they're at and you kind of walk them through and explain and then ask them for their ideas, yeah, that's something they want to get behind, because those are their tax dollars and they want to see their communities thriving. So we will make sure we pass along, I think in the follow-up materials, we have a short documentary that explains our Reinvest in GR campaign and those different meetings and how we got to where we did. So I encourage you all to check it out. It's about 12 minutes long. It really goes into more detail about that campaign. But that was super exciting. We had over 200 plus residents that were engaged through that. And like I said, really trying to support the grassroots organizers in our community to organize and bring the power together, right? Because our affordable housing organizers in the city weren't communicating with our environmental sustainability organizers, right? Or our equitable economic development organizers. But if we all can come together to combine our forces and combine our power, maybe then we can start getting something done. So that kind of leads me into our present, which we're currently doing doing a number of reinvesting in communities initiatives, right? So we're trying to fund each different group's ideas they have to try to move the needle in these different areas. One example is our affordable housing group came to us and they heard about the Rent is Too Damn High coalition that it was happening statewide. And that coalition is trying to build power among renters and unhoused people across the state of Michigan, right, to really advocate for affordable housing. So we chartered a bus to bring 30 some residents from Grand Rapids to Lansing, and we met with folks from Detroit who also came, in Ann Arbor, and folks from Lansing to sit at the Capitol and demand action. And the three things we were looking for was to remove the statewide ban on rent control, to get $5 billion for social housing and housing first programs, and a renter's bill of rights. So those right now are, it did not pass in this last legislation session that just ended, but those are the kind of things now that we're looking at of not just looking at city and county initiatives, but what are those statewide coalitions that we can be a part of, and how can we support our grassroots organizers that can come and they want to do these things, but they not have the funding or the organizing capacity to get this stuff off the ground, and how can we support them in ways to kind of move this work forward. And now we're looking at doing another charter amendment to try to again reduce that charter mandated minimum off the ballot. So we're looking at doing that in this coming year for an election next year, and hopefully we can get that passed and again keep moving forward. And so that's kind of an overview of where we are, where we've gotten. I think Willie, you're going to talk about those couple of questions that they had for us. I can repeat what those were real quick. Oh, I lost them.
Well, Isaac, that is exactly why I am here. So
okay, perfect, Sheba. Thank you. I was like, I had him on me and I just lost him. So if you want to set the scene for that.
That's why I am here, because you all have laid out so much, both in the way of the coalition and link up work. So I think we're curious, and I think what this session really want to uplift is, how do you successfully get that buy-in from community? So if you can share with us, what have been some of the key ways you've been able to build support in your community, and what has helped you build the support among your base? And what has helped you win over some of the skeptics as well? So yeah, that'll be super helpful.
Once we start to really delve into that, it really comes down to trust. Link Up has been in existence for more than 20 years, so we've had a little bit of time in the community, in the same space, on the same blocks, in the community, where we can start to build that trust. So it definitely starts with trust. It starts with that piece of transparency, whereas that there are no secret meetings. There's nothing that no data that we're collecting that we're not sharing back with the community. So it's imperative for us to make sure that whatever that the community is saying to us, we're reporting those findings back to the community, back to those people in the community that may not be able to attend those meetings. Those times may not work. There are a million factors in the community that keep people from attending meetings. So we want to make sure that the trust factor is there, and if you can attend a meeting, you'll be able to catch up wherever you jump into this process. Wherever you jump into the process, you'll be able to catch up because you do have notes, and there is a modicum of trust with Link Up. We want to make sure that our community knows we're accessible. You can come into our offices between 9 and 5 every day, Monday through Friday. But we just want to make sure that we are building that trust in the community, and we are organizationally sending the same message out from each person that you may encounter. Building that basis has been, huge in that aspect of just coming together and making sure that we are extending those opportunities and extending those opportunities as much as possible to the community, so that there are on-ramps to be involved. So if you can't be involved at 5 to 7, the next day we may stream it on Facebook, or we may stream the event live from our facility, so that there is access and on-ramps to be a part of everything going on, and making sure our liaisons in the community are present and able to be reached at any time, and the follow-up from anything that we do. So Isaac is doing a lot of work in our community around the reinvest, the community on safety, but we also want to make sure that we're following up with our community. We're touching base. We're just making that call. Hey, what did you think about the meeting? Is there anything that we should change? So making sure that the community hears from us once we're concerned about what they think, and then making sure that we're giving back the information to those who are not able to be present, and those who were present, they'll be able to see their words illuminated in social media, in notes, in emails, etc.
And Shiva, I can just add, I know we're short of time, is I think too, just that accessibility and getting people to understand what's going on, right? So I think a lot of folks might have not thought that this was an issue, right? But when we broke down the budget and we showed, right, over 30%, or right now, 35% of our budget is being spent on policing, and only this minuscule percent is being spent on these other services that also people think are important. That was really able to get folks over to our side who didn't, who hear the words defund and might have defund the police and might have been, negatively reacted to that. And we're, saying like, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying we need to invest in community services, because that's what actually gets to the root problem of crime and creates thriving communities. So that accessibility piece and educating folks in a way that they can understand and make it easy to understand was just so important for folks, because they didn't even know that charter amendment existed, right? That wasn't common knowledge. So just getting folks to hear that and like, wait, really? That's mandated? That's a lot. That seems ridiculous, right? And that was really huge in getting some skeptics over to our side.
Excellent. Thank you, Willie and Isaac. I would love to just get any reactions just via, any emojis. I know I'm just putting some hand claps because you all in the work you're doing is just phenomenal. I know we'll circle back for questions from the group after we hear from our next group, but just wanted to send some love and thank you for the wonderful presentation.
All right, thanks for having us.
And so with that, let's move on to and hear from our next group, which I'm super excited to be able to introduce, as DJC has done some work with this group, the Care-Based Safety. I'm very excited. Care-Based Safety responds to conflict and crisis with life-affirming care. This is a group, of course, that prevents destructive conflict and crisis through skill building and social support, collaborates with community partners in addressing the root causes of violence, crises, and neglect in Washtenaw County, and builds a culture and a system of care-based safety for all. So we are very excited to hear more about the work that care-based safety is doing. Please allow me to introduce Liz and Luna. Liz is an activist and community organizer. Liz combined years of nonprofit leadership experience from the NAACP to United Way with their lived experiences as a survivor, healer, and Detroit-rooted organizer to advance community-based networks of care, safety, and justice where all can thrive. Embracing the belief that care is the antidote to violence. They organize with the Detroit-based Healing by Choice collective and are deeply committed to strengthening networks of community care and safety throughout Southeast Michigan and beyond. Liz uses she, they pronouns. Luna, also with the Care-Based Safety, is a conflict practitioner and community organizer. She uses she, they pronouns and is the Programs and Partnerships Director. She brings and is motivated by personal experiences of policing of loved ones, interpersonal violence, familial incarceration, trauma, and mental health crises. Luna comes from a career of working in LGBTQIA plus affirming healthcare and public health for 10 years, while using their master's in conflict resolution to train and counsel folks about anti-oppressive and transformative approaches to conflict. Luna is a mediator, a street medic, a restorative and transformative justice practitioner, and a dog dad to the best rescued pit bull. More on the both of them, so I don't want to get too much into the bios, but would love to welcome them both, Liz and Luna, and please just take it over and let us know more about care-based safety and the work you all are doing.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here.
Thank you, Sheba, and hello, everyone.
All right, can you all see that slide? Awesome. Yeah, so we're Care-Based Safety. We're an unarmed non-police response program in Washtenaw County. We just got Facebook, so please search us on Facebook and give us some likes. So as stated already, our purpose is to respond to conflict and crisis with life-affirming care, prevent destructive conflict and crisis through skill building and social support, collaborate with community partners in addressing the root causes of violence, crisis, and neglect in Washtenaw County, and build a culture and system of care-based safety for all. And if it isn't obvious, I really resonated with everything that Isaac and Willie shared. I'll share a little bit about our history in a moment, but just it all felt very aligned. So we come from a community-led design. So this timeline starts in 2021, but just in light of Isaac and Willie sharing, we had multiple deaths at the hands of police in 2014, in 2007 and 2014, both David Ware and Aura Rosser were killed in Washtenaw County by police. We also had numerous cases of police injury, and we had two folks die in Huron Valley Correctional Facility here in Washtenaw County. So there is a long history of organizing around public safety, and we similarly went through a process of getting police accountability here in the city of Ann Arbor, and like you all shared, it was not as powerful or empowered as we had hoped it would be. And so a lot of our organizers come from those years of efforting in that way. But more specifically in 2021, an organization called the Coalition for Re-envisioning Our Safety which was an advocacy group, conducted research and held interviews, and did dozens of community listening sessions to come up with core recommendations for what unarmed non-police response should be, specifically in the city of Ann Arbor. And then in June 2022, a group of us got together and we were like, we could just do that. Like we see these recommendations and we believe that we have the skills and connections to create that. And so Care-Based Safety was formed. And over the last year, we held futuring sessions with incarcerated people's families. We held 18 community co-creation sessions and had dozens of meetings with unarmed response programs around the country to learn what's working, what's not working for them. And we also learned this specific model called sociocracy, which is a horizontal collective organizing model. And using all of that information, we created a program design, and Liz and I got hired to be the co-directors. And so that's kind of where we are today. Liz, did you want to add anything so far?
You're doing great. I can hop into the next slide.
Okay, great.
Great. So as Luna mentioned, we are a crew of folks who are building and organizing and really dreaming non-police alternatives in Washtenaw County and community design, and really centering the voices and the experiences of folks who are closest to this issue of policing incarceration is really important to us. So our mission circle and our advisory circles and staff are really representative of not only Washtenaw community residents, but those who are most impacted by policing in prisons. We do incorporate a non-hierarchical governance model in our organization. So instead of having a traditional nonprofit board, we use a sociocratic model. So we work in worker-led circles where we hold decision-making collectively and horizontally. So you can see some of our mission circles here. Our advisory circles are also really important in continuing to shape and build our programmatic design and operations. Our partnership circle, for example, is made up of all of folks, who are impacted by policing in prisons. And we have a ton of great folks, including Nancy Parker of DJC. So shout out DJC, who are really helping us hone this vision and make sure that our vision and our programmatic design is accountable and reflective of the needs of the community.
Oops, wrong way. So all that builds up to a two-part program. I say two parts, but really it's three parts. So one part of the program is the community building part, which is about crisis prevention. So this is where we do workshops, futuring sessions, capacity building, relationship building in neighborhoods, all to come up with ways that crisis, and when we say crisis, often we mean interaction with law enforcement, can be prevented. Like LINC Up, a lot of that, of course, is very connected to whether resources even exist in the community. And so the community building component also incorporates a lot of advocacy. And I'll share a little bit more about that in response to the questions. But the second part of the program, which we haven't launched yet, hopefully we will in spring, is the Care-Based Response Program. And this is direct crisis support. So we will have a public phone number disconnected from 911 where people can call in a conflict or crisis and have us come, and we'll have two trained staff people arrive first to de-escalate and stabilize the situation, engage in mediation, connection, listening, first aid, and then the people in crisis, if they want, can be linked to community volunteers with similar experience who can support them over the next few days and linking to other resources they need, or just to provide social support for the crisis. So we really believe that both of these parts of the program work together to build interconnection between community members and prevent encounters with law enforcement, arrest, incarceration, and hopefully to change the budget in Washtenaw County to move more toward meeting our shared public health needs. That is our last slide, so I'm going to stop sharing. And I think we're ready to answer those questions.
Thank you, Liz and Luna, straight to the point, giving us what we need. But we do have some questions, and then we do want to ask folks to put any additional questions you may have in the chat. So if you could just talk to us a little bit more about your efforts. Has there been an effort that you've tried that has been either a spectacular success or an instructive failure in terms of the work you've been launching?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think a spectacular success that we had very recently is that we joined, again, very similar to LINC Up, we joined a coalition in Ypsilanti that's addressing housing and homelessness. All people who are doing ground level work, like giving people tents to survive, getting people into hotels for emergencies, that level of support. We joined that coalition, and over the last 3 months, we're advocating at the county level for putting part of the budget into both short-term, immediate winter housing and shelter relief, and also long-term affordable housing and housing first solutions. And incredibly, $2.4 million were dedicated to immediate relief and eviction prevention, housing first solutions, winter shelter staffing, and then also $1 million commitment is up actually at tonight's meeting, $1 million a year to sustain that and explore more housing first solutions. And so this is one of our first efforts together in the community on a coalitional effort, and it was extremely successful by just bringing people from across the county together about these like core public health needs of what true safety really is meeting those needs that keep people safe, healthy, and treated with dignity in the community. So that was extremely exciting.
So excited about this. Yes, y'all. We love a win. We need some wins. Another, victory that I would say has just become more and more resonant as the organization continues to grow, and a lesson in how CROWS, our parent organization, and now CBS describes our work. Very similar to what Isaac mentioned, we did move away from defund the police narratives and messaging, understanding that it did turn a lot of folks off. It made our work unnecessarily divisive, and we've really embraced the messaging and narratives of a public health approach, which really emphasizes a preventative model. There is broad support in Washtenaw County and beyond for trained crisis responders, social workers, paramedics, folks who have experienced drug use, overdoses, things of that nature, actually being the ones to respond to the vast majority of 911 calls that are considered non-criminal and non-violent. So this idea that we are just providing another tool in the public safety toolbox, this idea that we are adding to the existing resources and not taking away, that language of investing versus divesting, as Isaac kind of mentioned, has been really important for us. And, we are in the business of keeping people safe and co-creating that safety and building community accountability for that safety. So we don't view our work as politicized work. We are care workers. And that's not to say that we don't, view our values and our history firmly rooted in the abolitionist movement, because I very much think we are. But the public health approach has been extremely effective for us. We work closely with the U of M Public Health School, really adopting transformative justice approaches, really folding in social workers into every step of the design process has also really helped. All of these various university departments have also provided us with a lot of really important data and evidence, which has been crucial for getting our model off the ground. Because as Luna mentioned, we haven't actually launched our response program yet. and have still been able to build so much and, do all this fundraising. And a lot of that is because we are, working very closely with university partners, with our peer organizations around the country to really build the data and the evidence for why community non-police response works and save lives and is the future of public safety. So that public health approach, the transformative justice approach, and really making sure that we have the data and the evidence to back us up, I think are some other real lessons and takeaways that have emerged since we've gotten started.
Thank you for that. I have a second question, but I want to go to the chat, and if I have time, I'll circle back. But thank you for that. And if we can just give some love to Care-Based Safety for their presentation, and just all that you're pouring into this work. So we just want to thank you for that. I did see a question coming through the chat for Care-Based Safety. So the question says, I've been interested in how emergency calls are handled when it is unclear if a situation presents a threat of violence. Can you speak to that? And then Alicia, I see your hand next.
Yeah, I can answer that. So a big part of the response program will be deeply training the people who answer the phone to do an on the phone analysis of what is going on. So are there weapons involved? Has there been any physical altercation? Describing the situation and doing that in a very non-judgmental way, and informing people that, we just are not equipped to respond to incidents that involve weapons or large groups of people engaged in assault. So like a really big fight or something like that. And wanting to give the caller all the information to make the best decision for them, right? So if they know that we're not equipped to deal with that, then they're more inclined to either call someone else or just ask for over the phone advice on what to do. So we might be able to talk them into other solutions, walking away, getting a neighbor to help or something like that we can't do. But our responders will also be fully trained in doing a safety assessment when they arrive on the scene. We know full well that we will not get all of the information over the phone. And so an assessment is ongoing when they arrive. How many people are there? Where are they? What is the body language? And at any time, it's up to the responders to decide if they have the capacity to respond or if they need to ask someone who's involved if they would like to call for another service. We personally will never call the police into a situation, but we will talk people through their options if they feel like, oh, this has escalated beyond when I initially called, and now maybe I do need more support. And hopefully, a few years from now, we'll be ready to do more of those violent incidents, but we're just not starting there. Thank you for that. Great question.
That was a great question. And thank you for that answer, Luna. And I just want to briefly add that this is one of the most common questions that we get. And from the haters, quite frankly, the naysayers, I know we're talking about naysayers today, a common narrative is, this work is simply unsafe. This is a chief narrative that is put forth by our sheriff's department, Ann Arbor PD, for example, like community unarmed non-police response is not safe. It's not safe to responders. It's not safe to the people we're responding to, etc. So we are also doing a lot of myth busting, and we are, public awareness and public education are two needs that emerged from all of the community design surveys and engagement processes that we did. It really emerged as needs that our community is asking of us to continuously build awareness about the shape and the effectiveness and the risk of these type of programs. So I just want to drop this one article in the chat, and this is from the Council of State Governments Justice Center, CSG. And this is busting myths about safety and community responder programs. And myth number 2 is that, community responder teams frequently require police backup to protect responders from violence or injury. And I just want to share one quick stat here. It says that a 2019 study found that 84% of behavioral health related 911 calls did not involve any type of violent behavior or the presence of weapons. Just wanted to provide that. And yes, CSG does have some really great resources, no doubt.
Thank you for that. We do want to invite Link up if you have any sort of thoughts or responses on that question as well. Feel free to chime in. I know we're getting close to a short break time before we go into small groups.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's echo what Liz and Luda said, and right. I mean, I think it's cool to hear like the same with the narrative pieces, right? Like that we're getting those same skeptics and how you have to switch those narratives and focusing on public health like you've done in that, similar strategies done in or housing or those things that people can understand a little bit easier than the public safety work. And I can echo kind of that the abolitionist ideas, but that you kind of have to, when you're the narrative you're creating, like how do we just change what this is, right? And that right, police aren't solving the root cause of crime. Like it's reactionary. How do we be more proactive? How do we be more efficient and effective with our funds, right? And it's not solving anything, right? And then you act right what we spend on the police or in prisons, right? Like it doesn't work. It's not working. It is not serving our communities well. And how do we get that message across and right, like in ways that people can understand that aren't in this, right?
So real, and everyone is on the same page that it's not working.
Right.
That is a bipartisan.
And the data show, right? Like there's plenty of evidence and data to show that, right? So yeah, I think it's cool to hear, right? That that some of work that, and we'll have to maybe have a follow-up thing because it's great to hear what the work you're doing, but yeah, just echo that.
Alicia?
So really want to thank the presenters today for being on the panel. And my question is, so we started moving away from the defund the police narrative a long time ago because we are so connected and ingrained in community, and the people who did not like the messaging were the actual people who were directly impacted by it. And my thought is that there are a lot of other narratives in which we need to move away from like that as well. And what are some some tips that you can give us on this call for like changing mindset, changing messaging with the communities of directly impacted people after what you've heard from them when the masses is using another type of communication? Because I got in trouble a lot of times because I pushed back on the defund the police. I just want to put that out there. And it seems I was right.
I feel like I don't want to put Liz on the spot, but I feel like Liz usually has a good response.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand your question right. You're asking how to make sure that we are honoring like the perspectives of directly impacted folks in our messaging and narrative efforts. Did I capture that right? Or
so when the masses like us, when organizers and people who do this work are using a certain language, right? And it's abolitionist language, but the actual people who are directly impacted by it don't like it, which was the thing with, defund the police, right? How is it that you make those mindset changes and narrative shifts when there are two different sides of community that are pushing back on that messaging?
You're muted.
Thanks, Luna. That is a great question. Thank you for that. And, I think the answer can be simple, which is that, language and messaging has to be accessible to community. If it's not accessible, it's not radical, it's not revolutionary, it's not transformative. If it's not accessible, nobody's about to call us up to try and see CBS crisis responders show up. Access is everything to what we do because that is how we build trust. That is how we're accountable to communities. So if our messaging was at any point alienating to, directly impacted folks, the folks who are closest to experiencing state violence and state harm, we want to make sure that everything that we're putting out, from our street flyers to our website is really in language that is resonant with them. And I think that also goes into cultural competency. You know, cultural competency is really important to us as a crisis response team. We really we have a peer responder model, for example, so that we're not just having social workers show up. There will also be someone who has shared experiences with the person who is calling for support to provide that extra level of, you know, rapport and solidarity. And yeah, I think, you know, a lot of us, you know, I assume probably come to this work perhaps as, you know, directly impacts people. And, you know, I'm a survivor, but I'm also an organizer. You know, I'm an activist. I'm college educated. I'm bringing all of these, you know, experiences that, you know, I do write in a different way, perhaps, than a Washtenaw community resident who is most impacted by the various forms of housing inequities, economic violence we're seeing in Washtenaw County right now. So I think it's important to really challenge ourselves to make sure that our messaging is accessible. You know, we have translation services budgeted for all of our outreach materials so that, you know, we have things in different languages for folks. Like access in general is a really important need. And I think it's a real equity issue. So because we have these circles of directly impacted folks, we have a space where we could talk through this tension. You know, we hope that there's going to be generative tension in terms of our messaging. We are serving an entire county, so there is going to be a large range of folks where certain messages resonate more than others. But I think that if we were ever to alienate those closest to the issues, we would be straying from our mission, our values, and our purpose. And that would be a moment in which we would have to really reevaluate.
And I totally, like, I think it's easier for us to connect with our communities, but when it's our peers that we're having to push back on and tell them our community is actually not resonating with that, that was really hard for us. So I think I appreciate your answer.
Yeah, and I'll add to that I am meeting with people who are unhoused every day, and frequently they're saying to me, well, I need to call the cops sometimes. And I'm just like, okay, I get that. Like, I'm not trying to take that option away from you right now. We do not have an alternative that will meet that specific need that you're naming, and just being non-judgmental and respecting and honoring their unique experiences with violence, and sharing my own experiences with violence on a human level, and just saying, hey, this is why I would rather not have had the cops called during this thing. What do you think about that? Instead of it being like, oh, you have to sign this ballot measure, or you have to support this political thing. What are your needs? How are your needs being met? How are they not being met? Is the level of the conversation that I think we're having day to day.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Alicia, for that last question. I know that we had one more question. We may have to circle back to get that answer for you, Desiree. The question that was posed in the chat: how have you had to push against the police unions as you start to push for these alternatives? So we would love to hear more of that. During our deeper dive session next month, these are definitely the kinds of questions we can get into as we have more intimate time with our speakers. So just want to put that out there for our next time, but hopefully we can circle back before that next session with an answer to that. Hey, wonderful, and welcome back. We had a very awesome breakout room, and I trust the other breakout rooms were also very productive. Does anyone want to share just briefly if you have something pressing from your breakout room that you're sitting with before we leave? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I was in the breakout room with Des, Willie, I believe Ann was her name. Of course, I went to that particular breakout room because of Willie, because I'm very impressed with LINC Up and what they're doing. And what I was impressed with is their campaign and building the base. And so I had specific questions for Willie, which he graciously answered perfectly. So I got some ideas from some tools implemented that they use, and how some of their structure and the way they are set up. I personally feel campaigns and building a base is key in organizing and activism. So I really appreciated Willie being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Any other pressing thoughts or questions, or just anything that came out of your breakout rooms? I know we only have just like a minute or two left.
So I was in, oh, go
Sorry.
ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
No, please go ahead.
I was just going to shout out Bill. He shared out a resource that I think would be helpful for the group. He, as a project, they started a conflict resolution strategies website with a bunch of resources on it. And that email, I can drop it in the chat, but it's creducation.net. And I just really wanted to share that and thank Bill for sharing that with the group. And also thank Liz for leading that breakout session.
Thank you, Kay. I love it. Thank you, Bill.
I just really quickly wanted to, I was in a really amazing group with Mary Jo, Allison, and Larry, and I just want to thank them for their honesty and
you went off mute. You went on mute.
Around this conversation, and we talked a lot about, like, you know, the necessary use of like police when needed and not shaming or blaming people for that, but also like really understanding, you know, that investment is important in our communities. And we talked a lot about where sometimes there is a serious need for police when there is violence. So I appreciated them for their honesty and candidness.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Sheba.